Blair Best. It's Wednesday here on The Story, and tonight we're taking you inside Phase 2 of a multi-billion-dollar project at the Portland International Airport, what's still being worked on and when it'll be done. Plus, the Washington Police Academy banning a certain handgun after numerous incidents caught on camera appear to show the gun firing without the trigger being pulled. But first, the city of Portland and Multnomah County leaders met today to talk about their response to the homeless crisis amid massive budget shortfalls looming, and the public's frustration over a lack of obvious progress continues to simmer. It's our big story tonight. Now, the point of today's meeting, held inside the newly renovated City Council chambers, was for Multnomah County leaders to present a progress report on the homelessness response plan. Data from the end of last year is finalized, so much of their data was for all of 2024, mainly outlining sheltering goals. City and county commissioners had 2 minutes each to share their opinions and ask questions. Another point of the meeting was for the new City Council to let the county know if they share the same priorities when it comes to addressing this crisis. Now, one of the most important players in all of this, County Chair Jessica Vega Peterson. She was there today, giving us some unfulfilling yet expected talking points.
That is going to take, conversations in both the short term and in the long term, and conversations with our sister counties. So I've appreciated the conversations I've already had, and we need to be working together and in partnership for doing that. So I'm looking forward to the ongoing conversations. What I'm really hoping that we can do today is start the conversation about our shared priorities.
Okay, so lots of conversations. Great. But let's get into today's presentation. It's 27 pages long and outlines what are called key performance indicators, or KPIs, things the county is labeling as important and what they're using to measure success. Now, stick with me here. I know this may seem dry right now, but juicy stuff is coming. Before we can get to that, we have to dig into the data. So I'm going to show you 3 graphs. Each illustrate some of the major takeaways from the report, and then we'll hear from councilors and commissioners. Okay, here we go. First, the county report shows they sheltered or housed more than 11,000 people in all of 2024. That's the tallest bar on this graph. That number is more than halfway to the county's goal of getting more than 18,000 people off the streets by the end of this year. Can they actually achieve that? Well, that was a key point of discussion, along with how much it will cost, given the current budget shortfalls both the county and the city are facing. Here's District 3 Councilor Angelita Murillo, who represents much of Southeast Portland.
Something that I see a lot in these presentations is that some of the costs for having people in shelter spaces, when I calculate it out per day, per month, it seems to be a little bit over $3,000 or more than that sometimes. And when I think about the average cost of a 1-bedroom apartment in Portland being $1,700 a month, it just makes me curious about how we are I'm taking your lead already, about how we should be investing these dollars in the best way possible.
So the second graph is how many people are leaving shelter for permanent housing. Take a look at the dark blue bar on the far right. The county reports more than 1,200 people left shelter for housing, which is great, but that number represents only 20% of everyone who left shelter. So only 1 in 5 people who are in shelter are actually going to permanent housing. The county's goal is double that. As for the other 80% of people who did not go into permanent housing, the county says they don't know where they went. I say, based on my reporting, they're likely back out on the streets. City councilors say they need more specifics. And if these percentages make you pause or don't mean anything to you at all, don't feel bad. You're not alone.
Saying 20% people exited shelter to permanent housing, I don't know what those numbers are. So I'm having a really hard time grasping these.
What we got here today is just a presentation on our shelter system, not on the entire ecosystem of housing. And so in order for me to give you direction, I need to see the entire ecosystem of what's being spent.
And the data shows that we only had 20% exit from shelter to housing. So really answering that question is, like, why are we so far off the target?
Okay, so a lot of questions there. Now, the third graph is focused on what the county calls priority populations. The gray lines here are the baseline or the goal, and the dark blue lines are how they performed towards those goals. The county got more than 2,400 Black, African American, or African people sheltered or housed last year, but did not meet their goal. It was the only metric on this graph where the goal was not met or surpassed.
What's the percentage of African American, and Black, so that I know exactly, so that we can pull the numbers? And the reason why I asked you this, if this is a priority group of folks that you want to help, you did not give it a number. You did give the LGBTQ community a specific number to hit. And actually, the Black and African Americans were the ones that needed more attention. So I would like you to give it a number.
Seeing it persist today is frustrating. When we couple this with the reality that the Portland Housing Bureau State of Housing report has told us that Black households cannot afford rent in any neighborhood for years, it is downright infuriating. This discussion happening during Black History Month propels me to say that we are tired of waiting. I want to know specific strategies and timelines to inform our budget. I want monthly updates, and I want to know what the community and providers say need to be done instead of just what we think needs to be done.
The county admitted they want to improve how they track the data. They still are not tracking what they call inflow and outflow, which is basically the number of people newly becoming homeless and the number of people exiting homelessness. Seems important to know. Now, we're told that type of tracking is in progress, but it's not ready yet.
I'm concerned about the continued lack of data of inflow and outflow because we actually have no idea whether there's a net reduction in homelessness without that, and we've been promised that for a while.
Okay, yikes. Now keep in mind, again, this all comes as a budget crisis looms in the background. Both the city and county facing deficits in the neighborhood of $100 million each, meaning some homeless services will likely have to be cut from both governments. Leaders have been warning about this since Friday. Today, they said 3 congregate shelters will likely close. One in Old Town at the old Greyhound station will shutter in about a month, and 2 others that were not specified will not be replaced. Plans for a motel shelter, among other future shelter sites, will also be canceled if they can't find the money to keep them running. The county faces a budget gap of $104 million in their homeless services department. They blame much of the shortfall on Metro's supportive housing services tax, bringing in $21 million less than expected. So they're asking Metro, the governor, and neighboring counties to pitch in. We've covered this extensively over the past few days, and today, some county and city councilors suggested a real novel concept: use the money they have, but differently.
We are not currently leveraging funds that we could be leveraging. And so one of my primary goals is to look at opportunities to leverage Medicaid dollars for things like Portland Street Response, as well as for our housing work. We could be leveraging SHS in a way that we are just not doing, and we have got to figure that out.
Folks, it's pretty alarming. Our dollars fund a total of 5,802 positions across all of our providers. The city has about 7,000, okay? Of those 5,802 positions, 1,897 is administrative overhead. That's 41% of our spending is administrative overhead. There are 196 executive leader positions that these dollars are funding at an average cost of $120,000 per year. And so if you just trimmed the administrative bloat from our dollar spending, you would close this gap. Okay, we shouldn't be closing beds, we should be trimming our administrative bloat. We have got to get this under control. We cannot keep going back to the state and other buckets of money or providers for money and hope to kind of continue to pay this cost unless we're willing to ask the hard questions and say, is this the best use of our costs?
Kiss Councilor Green more than that statement, so thank you. Woo, I'm fired up after hearing that.
Okay, so it got a little heated there, and for good reason. Now, there's also concern about any progress the county is making addressing this crisis, slowing or stopping once budget cuts are made.
And I'm really worried about how we're going to triage this when the money isn't there. If this is cut and that's cut, this cut, what are we going to do? That's of great concern to me.
Now, after all that, it is no secret why the community lacks trust in local government. If you live in Multnomah County, you likely don't have to drive more than a half mile before seeing some aspect of the homeless crisis in your neighborhood. And that's not lost on city councilors.
I do not think that we have the public's trust right now, and we desperately need to get it and keep it if we're going to expect them to continue opening up their wallets and their hearts.
Now, after the 2-hour meeting, I caught up with Council President Ilana Pertolgini outside chambers, and she had this to say about what it will take to earn the public's trust back.
Openness, transparency, communication. The agreement that we have with the county requires us to have meetings like this every quarter, 4 times a year. And we'll have more discussion next time since we won't be looking at a budget. We'll have the space to do that. And I hope that the community tunes in. The only thing we can do to make sure that the community trusts our process is to make sure that we're sharing that process with the community and that we're responding to the feedback we get from Portlanders. That's how I plan on operating these meetings as much as we can.
So the council president wants your feedback, and so do we. What's going through your mind after that homelessness response recap? Anything surprise you? Email us, thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Now, as we've continued to report on each step of these budget crises in Portland and Multnomah County, you have lit up our inboxes with your thoughts. Here are a few that came in last night following my live interview with Metro President Lynn Peterson. Linda was blunt, writing, "If we all ran our households like Multnomah County, we would all be homeless. Tracking their money shows intelligence and an earnest interest in doing a good job. If they are too lazy to do the tracking work, they should at least be grateful that Metro wants to do the work for them. Say yes, please. What are they afraid of? Valid information?" A viewer named Pat wrote to us, "So why do the leaders have such a difficult time gathering together to work on it region-wide? The answer at first glance seems, I would say, to be the lack of real leadership. No one rises to the top to take charge, and the way the government institutions are arranged, they conflict rather than cooperate." And Tim agreed. He says to effectively tackle homelessness, all levels of government must collaborate openly and share responsibilities in a regional response. It's time to reset, work together, and demonstrate to voters that the government can be trusted with their tax dollars. Now, speaking of homeless services, this week, Governor Tina Kotek sat in front of lawmakers in Salem to testify on behalf of a bill that would set up a statewide homeless shelter system. House Bill 3644 would direct $218 million to set up that system, as well as continuing to fund the 4,800 shelter beds that the state already has in place. Kotek says right now, many shelters are supported by one-time funding that came during the pandemic, and she wants to see the state continue to support them after that money is gone. But she says she wants those shelters throughout the state to be run by regional coordinators. They would need to submit plans and assessments to the state. The governor says she's been working on this plan with a statewide work group for about 6 months.
But we have created a system that needs to be sustained and maintained, and the state has to have a role. So what you see in the bill and the hard work of the work group is systemizing what has been happening, taking a regional approach, taking a approach that says we must get people housed in different types of ways determined by the communities through their consideration of what works best. The state is a partner. We're not telling folks what to do. We're guiding and saying we need some consistency across the state. We have to have measurable outcomes. We need to know how the dollars are producing the outcomes we need.
Kotek says this is part of the homelessness emergency order she signed on her first day in office. She talked about it more in a news conference yesterday, saying the $218 million is needed to simply keep the services we have in place.
That's not to grow it, that's to sustain the foundation that we have built across the state under my emergency orders to have some level of existing shelter continue into the next biennium.
Others weighed in during the public hearing for the bill in Salem, including Cindy Timmons, a commissioner from Umatilla County who supports the bill and what it could do to help people in rural Oregon.
We have towns with absolutely no services. And so when folks show up in these towns, they're given a meal, and they're taken back out to the highway, and we're talking about a 2-lane road here, and they're told, don't come back now, you hear? And unfortunately, that doesn't say a lot for being a good human, but it's true. And so I really want to bring that up, is that Morrow, Gilliam, and Wheeler County have no shelter beds. Union and Wallowa County, they have emergency shelter, but they do not have like Pendleton, like Umatilla County does.
Now, this bill is part of the $700 million package the governor is asking for to address homelessness as part of the next state budget. Lawmakers on the committee were enthusiastic about it in committee. We'll see if that translates to passage in the coming weeks and months this session. Well, coming up next on the story, a popular handgun is permanently banned from the police academy in the state of Washington over concerns that it could fire without pulling the trigger. It's an update to an investigation we told you about earlier this month. Full details when the story returns. Well, our team here at The Story is working on a segment for later this week about downtown Portland and the attempts to bring it back to life over the years. And we want to hear from you. If you've spent time in downtown Portland recently, what did you like? What did you dislike? Did you go to an event, a restaurant? Do you work downtown? Tell us about your experience and give it a letter grade, like for a report card. Example, I came to the Winter Light Festival and I give it a B+, and here's why. We want to hear it all good or bad or in the middle. Be as specific as possible. Email us thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail 503-226-5090. The state agency that trains police officers in the state of Washington has permanently banned the use of a common handgun carried by law enforcement. Earlier this month, we showed you the mounting evidence against a Sig Sauer handgun. As Chris Ingalls reports, the decision at the academy could be costly for some local law agencies.
On the range at the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Center.
3 left side, 3 right side.
Recruits hired by police departments from all over the state learn how to use firearms. preferably the same firearm they'll carry while on duty after they're sworn in as police officers. But now, police agencies that issue this gun, the Sig Sauer P320, will have to accept a substitute for training purposes. Executive Director Monica Alexander permanently banned the use of the P320 on training commission premises.
So we will no longer have that firearm on our campus. It could hurt someone, it could kill someone, and we are very concerned about keeping our officers and our instructors safe.
What the hell?
The P320 has been blamed in dozens of cases nationwide in which police officers were struck or nearly hit by rounds that were fired even when the gun was holstered. Virginia Deputy Marcy Vadnais' career ended when her holstered P320 fired into her leg.
100% this needs to be banned. This gun needs to be recalled across the country, not even just Washington State. This gun needs to be taken off the market altogether.
As the King 5 investigators reported earlier this month, this is the video that stoked the training center's concern about the gun. At its Spokane facility, a recruit's P320 fired, narrowly missing the recruit and instructor standing next to him. The recruit's trigger finger was not on the trigger or in the trigger guard, according to the seasoned instructor. The Training Commission temporarily barred the P320 after that incident in October, while a task force studied the issue. Now the ban is permanent.
My position has to be safety, because we know so much now, and if I make a different decision, then I don't feel like I'm being responsible.
The ban only applies to Training Commission premises, but already some departments that issue P320s are making a change. The Kitsap County Sheriff's Office has more than 200 in service.
We've already begun our transition away from the Sig Sauer P320. The reason is because of the safety issues. Our agency had looked at them, looked at the discussion around the safety issues involving them, and decided that we want to have our deputies to have the safest, most effective equipment they possibly can in the field.
No comment from Sig Sauer on this story. Previously, the company has denied the P320 can be fired without a trigger pull. We got in touch with the biggest law enforcement agencies in Oregon to see if they use the P320. Most of them who got back to us said no. Portland, Gresham, Oregon State Police, and the Marion County Sheriff's Office do not use it. Now, as far as training officers goes, Oregon's Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, which runs Oregon's Police Academy, says they only have one used by staff. Well, still ahead on the story, we take you inside phase 2 of the major renovation at Portland International Airport. From the iconic carpet to those exposed mass timber beams. What's next? That's when the story returns. Well, the second phase of the new main terminal at Portland International Airport is starting to take shape. It's part of a $2 billion project. You're looking at what used to be one of the old security checkpoints, now fully exposed to the elements as crews prepare to move new sections of that mass timber roof into place. And that means we're just over a year away from the end of this construction at PDX. David Milko gives us a tour.
The last time we checked in at the new PDX on opening day in August, it was a feast for the senses.
The first thing you'll notice is that the check-in counters have been flipped into islands.
Though the terminal wasn't finished.
The day after phase 1 of the main terminal opened, the project team got to work on phase 2.
Including ripping up the rug in the old TSA atriums, saying goodbye to the old country cat, out with the old and in with the big crane? Yep. Lowering what are called Y columns into place, 55 feet tall each with a 20-foot span, all to support new sections, another 2 acres, give or take, of that show-stopping mass timber roof.
And we're also going to have more comfortable seating added, and we're going to have more shops and restaurants.
Plus, new exit lanes with a straight shot to baggage claim.
The bypasses are going to be gone, so they're going to have new direct routes,
which will look something like this. Right now, everyone funnels into the heart of the terminal, then jockeys out through the check-in islands. Next year, construction areas filled in. It'll get a whole lot simpler.
The reason why this was a phased opening, it allowed us to do this project without ever closing the airport for a day.
Well, phase 2 at PDX is set to open in just over a year. We'll also add new lounges and 2 brand new meet and greet areas for arriving passengers. Well, that is the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching. The good stuff is coming your way next. And don't forget, everyone has a story to tell. If you ever miss an episode of The Story at 6:30, we re-air the episode at 8:30 and 10:30 p.m. over on our TV app, KGW+. You can download it right now. It's free on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. In the meantime, have a great Wednesday night, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.